In 2013, I moved with my family to a foreclosed six-bedroom home on 14 acres straight up in the middle of nowhere in the Poconos. My father and I noticed very weird things going on the second we moved in, but my mother and sister seemed to not notice these things. Everyone besides me and my dad and the entire family are the oh, it was the wind type of people, if you get what I mean. There's some evidence that the entire area of where this house is located is haunted, as in ghosts and Native American burial grounds and other things. Now, historically speaking, with actual evidence, people settled here around the old mill area long ago and brutally killed many Iroquois Indians. The area is very spread out over miles of heavily wooded mountains. 2 weeks ago, my uncle on my mother's side and his girlfriend came to visit my parents' home. They do this quite often, as my parents always have people over for beer, games, bonfires, etc. I just want to start off by saying my uncle is a non believer, a Harley rider who to this day I've never seen him really scared of anything or anyone before this sighting. My uncle and his girlfriend are playing foosball with my parents when they realize it's 12:30 a.m., so they decide to head home. They take all back roads, and once they turn onto Running Valley Road, 6 minutes from the house, my uncle's girlfriend sees two figures. They were pretty far away at this point, but it was two small figures waiting to cross the road. Just to mention, there was nothing else here. No houses, besides one abandoned one that was still 2 miles up the road. Only thing in the vicinity is a cave. These figures were attempting to cross the road to go into the woods, which was very odd because of the time and location. They're now approaching these figures. Headlights start to shine directly on them. Both my uncle and his girlfriend see two young girls aged around 10, one much bigger than the other, wearing what my uncle best describes as early 1900s church clothing, like dresses to the knee, with white cotton shawls or cropped sweaters and flats. Weird, right? What the fuck are two 10-year-olds doing at 12:30 in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, wearing church clothing? They also noticed the bigger child had her arms wrapped around the smaller one, like you would do if she was hurt, scared, or cold. At this point, my uncle's girlfriend is like, it's children, we need to stop and help. Now at this point, the truck is almost right next to the little girls. Both had their heads held down. So then the bigger of the two starts to pick her head up to look at the passing vehicle. Then both my uncle and his girlfriend notice the girl has no eyes. Just black holes as if they were carved straight from her face. Girlfriend says, "What the fuck was that? You saw that, right? Oh my God, turn around and go back right now." My uncle, scared shitless, takes the fuck off, flying to get home. Then they get home and get into an argument because she wants to drive back and see what was up. Grabs her own car keys, and my uncle basically was like, "You're not going back there. We are never going on that road again." He calls my parents in an extreme panic, tells them, and they start bugging because they know he would never lie or be that freaked out if it wasn't warranted. So my mom starts to tell me everything. Mind you, my fam knows nothing of black-eyed kids, never heard of it before. I send my mom an article to forward to my uncle with some of the very basic info. Young kids, no eyes, dreadful feeling, sometimes outdated clothing, hitchhiking are at your door, looking for help, etc. So this is just some weird experience my husband and I have had over the past 2 years, on top of a few others. We've noticed it come and go, and we've never been harmed, but we can't sleep due to the amount of strange activity. About 2 years ago, in May I believe, I exited my shower. It was about midday and sunny out. My big bay window, fuzzy for privacy, lets all the sun in so the master bathroom is always well lit. I dried off, toweled down my hair, and slipped on a t-shirt with biking shorts. As I was scrunching my hair with some leave-in conditioner, I felt a distinct tug on the back of my shirt, about the level a 3 to 5-year-old would be able to reach. Nothing was there when I turned around, but the room was freezing suddenly, to the point I saw little puffs of breath. The same thing happened to my husband a few weeks later, and there were tiny puddles of child-sized footprints on the tiles. It shook us both badly. After that, it got worse. Anytime we showered or went to lie down to sleep, there was always this vibe in the room. The air was thick and humid, enough that I had a horrible time breathing due to my asthma. My husband's had begun having horrible nightmares so vivid and real that I had to once slap him to get him to truly wake up. He becomes so disoriented and confused that he's thrashed around and fallen out of bed. I've never seen him like this. He doesn't have mental health issues. We even went to a doctor, then therapist/psychiatrist to be sure. They called them night terrors and left it at that. But he keeps seeing a huge black figure with whites for eyes and horrifically large teeth. He said he's never seen anything like it before and has to take a pretty good-sized dose of melatonin to help him sleep at night. It's really wearing on him. I've noticed a darker spot in the corner of our room, about 7 feet tall, and it's so black that normal black can't properly describe it. It's like that Vanta black or whatever they call it. I recently saw something while in the shower, through the shower door, fuzzy for privacy. I thought I saw a little grey figure about the size of a child standing in the middle of our master bathroom. I didn't have my glasses on, so this figure was very, very fuzzy, but distinct due to the white door it was standing in front of. It must have heard me gasp because the door swung open violently, and I could hear the sound of bare feet smacking against the wooden floors. I dashed out of the shower and threw my robe on, trying to catch up to the kids. I had my glasses on by then and could make out little wet footprints about the size of my 4-year-old nephew's feet. The entire house was checked. Doors were locked, windows locked. No way could a kid get in otherwise. Our 2 cats refused to sleep with us anymore and hiss at the threshold of the master bedroom. That's not like them at all. They're snug bugs and big babies. What the hell is going on in our house? Back when I was a kid, I used to stay at my grandparents' house a lot, as it was both closer to school and my parents were working long hours. There was also a homeless guy in that area who was also drunk and would scare the children on the street. He was called Steve, and people started using him as a bogeyman for children that would misbehave even long after he either left the area or passed away. I don't know what happened to him. I remember it was around the same time of the year in 1996 because I had just gotten the Nintendo 64 for my birthday immediately after it was released in North America. I was so enamored with the console that I absolutely refused to go to bed and kept on playing the game. My exasperated grandparents tried to get me to bed by first switching off the lights and then telling me that Steve will come and get me. When that didn't work, they started saying, "Look, Steve is already in the backyard." I decided to take a peek at the window, and lo and behold, there was a humanoid figure darker than the night at the window. I was extremely scared and started crying. At first, my grandparents played along, but when they realized that I was genuinely scared, they started saying that there's nothing outside. Yet, I could see this humanoid figure at the window. They tried to comfort me and turned on the lights, and the figure vanished, but when they turned the lights back off, the figure reappeared. After insisting a lot that the figure was there, My grandpa took me outside to show me that no one was there, and indeed, no one was there. I went to bed and rarely since thought of it again, usually chalking up to my overly active childish imagination. Now, as my grandma thinks she doesn't have much time left, she decided to renovate the house so she can leave a beautiful house to be sold by us when she's gone. My uncle and I have been doing most of the work. The incident that triggered my memory happened this weekend, when my uncle brought his family over, including his 5-year-old daughter. We decided to spend the night there to both keep my grandma company and to do the last finishing touches. At night, as we were preparing to head off to bed, my 5-year-old cousin just asked my uncle, "Who's that man outside?" I looked as well out the window, but couldn't see anything, nor could any of the other adults. However, she kept insisting that there's a man watching through the window, and she started crying and acting all terrified, just like I did 25 years ago. So now I wonder, if two children roughly the same age see the same thing and act pretty similarly, is it just a coincidence? Or could there be something more sinister to it? I wonder what your thoughts are. Husband, 9-month-old, and I sleeping in our bedroom and have experienced odd happenings over the last 3 weeks. I was asleep the first night, so was our baby in his crib, and husband was awake watching TV on his phone with headphones in. He heard a noise and took out the headphones. While this is happening, I'm having a nightmare that an evil presence is trying to get into our room. Husband hears loud tapping on the window and I wake up. I'm groggy as fuck and he asks, "Did you hear that?" I nod my head because a noise woke me, but I don't really know what the noise was. Remember, my dream was absolutely terrifying, so I wake up thinking it's not a dream and that something really is trying to get inside our room. My heart is pounding and I'm full of this depressing dread. Hubby gets up and looks out back the door window. Keep lights turned off. He grabs a knife from the kitchen and opens the door. There is nobody. Our husky is staring at the side of our house, fixated on something. But when husband goes outside, there's nothing there. He goes back inside and our baby is screaming and crying because he heard the noise as well. Our son sleeps through the night every night. We also sleep with the fan on full speed to create a sound barrier to help him stay asleep. Second time, several days later, I wake up to hubby opening our door and shining his flashlight on the phone into the living room. He kept hearing a thumping on the walls. Again, our son wakes screaming. Third time, I wake to the dog barking in our backyard. And I hear a noise, but again can't be sure what it was since I was asleep and I'm groggy as fuck. Husband was awake again watching TV and swears he heard a door open and shut in the living room, but the door was locked. Again, son wakes up crying. On Saturday, we put a 30-year-old crucifix that was blessed in a church in Mexico in our room, against the window where the knocking occurred, and haven't had any disturbances since. I feel like there's still a muted, disturbing presence, but since putting up the crucifix, I feel safe. My great-grandpa was a World War II veteran that died of polio, I want to say 12 or 13 years ago. I went with my grandma years later to his grave to place flowers. At this cemetery, they had metal flower vases that were tall and skinny and would flip upside down and recess into a hole. With a twist, it locked into place. It was also kept there by a chain. All of this, sadly, was to deter theft. When I tried to twist it, it came undone, but I couldn't lift it out. Me and my grandma took turns trying to lift it, but couldn't. I had heard stories about great grandpa before his polio, and he was always known to be a prankster and light-hearted. I told my grandma, it's almost like grandpa is messing with us. And out of nowhere, it lifted out of the hole. It's like he was there, and when I pointed it out, he knew the jig was up and let go. I still couldn't help but laugh through the tears. Even in death, he kept his sense of humour. It was evening, and I went out the back field to watch the sunsets as usual. The view was best there, and the sunlight always looked cool over the trees. I took the 15-ish minute walk on the gravel road that connects all of our land. Through the gates, over the creek, past the pond, and finally into the back field. I watched it set over the trees until I couldn't get a view of it anymore. It was starting to get dark, so I decided to go back home, until I saw something. At the other side of the field, right across from me, I saw what looked like a buck staring right at me. And while it's not abnormal to see a deer out there, it's odd that it didn't get spooked by me being out there. Since my mom hunts in those woods, I got my phone out to take a picture of it to show her. But the sun had basically set, so all you can see in the picture is a silhouette. That's when it started getting weird. I looked up from the picture and saw the silhouette change. It got taller, like the deer stood up on its back legs and just stood there, motionless. For way too long. Feeling uneasy but trying not to get scared, I casually put my phone back in a pocket and started walking home. It was getting quite dark after all, and it's just a wild deer, nothing to be scared of, right? So I turned my back to the deer and began walking. But something felt wrong. It's like I could feel someone staring at me, or something. I quickly looked over my shoulder, but saw nothing. It was very dark now, so all I would be able to see is shadow anyway. I saw nothing until I saw something. The deer. But it was wrong, so wrong. Just typing this out is making me uneasy. It was still standing upright, just like it was before I started walking home. But it was running, straight running towards me. That's when I knew something was wrong. This isn't normal, and I better start running. I sprint through the gate and get onto the gravel road, screaming for someone to help me. My bare feet getting torn up by the sharp rocks I'm running over. Fumbling with my phone as I ran, I called my dad, who was thankfully home. Hello? Someone is chasing me! I don't hesitate to tell him, obviously, especially since the deer is gaining. About half the distance away it was when I first saw it running. I can hear my dad on the other end of the phone, slamming the front door open and running outside. But I can't hear or see the thing behind me. It's black dark out now, and all I see is a shadow getting 50, 40, 30 feet away. I tear through the creek bed as I run through it, finally seeing my house lights in the distance. I scream as loud as I've screamed my entire life, the breath scratching my lungs as I do so. I'm running uphill now, not stopping once this entire time. And I finally see my dad in front of me, running even faster than I am. He jumps the last gate separating me from my house and starts yelling, "Get away, get away, get..." When he finally reaches me, instead of stopping at me, he keeps running past me and keeps yelling. I fall to the ground, barely able to catch a breath, tears streaming down my face. After maybe 20 seconds, my dad kneels next to me. "Did you see it?" I force out of my trembling lungs. I didn't see anything. Apparently, whatever chased me was afraid of my dad. because once he was in view, it ran away. He is a pastor, so if this was a demonic spirit, it makes complete sense that it left once my dad got to me. Now, it's been a year since that happened. I'm made fun of by most people because everyone thinks it was just a sickly deer with rabies or something, even my parents. But my great uncle, who's literally an expert on wildlife, says there's no way. He says it was most likely a bear, but a bear hasn't been seen here for 30 plus years. And I don't think bears have antlers. I was in bed at around midnight yesterday. I usually go to bed around 10 p.m., but procrastinated some work and stayed up late to finish it. So when I went to bed, I set an alarm for 7 in the morning, tucked myself in, and waited for sleep to come to me. However, it didn't. I checked my phone time and time again, watching the hours pass by. Then, at around 3:30, my dog, who usually stays beside my bed, suddenly starts whimpering at the bedroom door to be let out. So I get out of bed to let him out, but that's when I notice that he isn't sitting at the bedroom door to be let out, but staring at the bed unflinchingly, even when I call his name multiple times. I decided to sit beside him with my pillow and hopefully doze off. I slept and didn't dream. I woke up at 7 due to my alarm and started running errands. I forgot about the incident at night until my friend came to my house. He was noticeably worried and asked me if everything went well last night. After I told him what happened, he starts sweating and asks me to get out and come to his house. He believes in the paranormal, and I didn't. I do now. He tells me to have a seat and starts narrating a dream which he had. Apparently in his dream, he saw everything I did that night, but from the perspective which was on the bed. He told me in his dream that at around 3:30, my dog just started staring at him for an hour, which he did in reality too. Strangely, my friend had an extremely vivid description of everything, and some things I hadn't told him about, such as my water bottle being empty that night and my laptop charger still plugged in and not put away. He also said something which gave me the chills. He said that he wanted to hurt me in his dream. His goal was to apparently take my nails off and stab me with them. It seemed extremely unnatural and unsettling, so we both went back into my house. However, what I saw next made me a believer in the paranormal too. A human nail on my bed, intact. Not a small piece, the full nail. It scared me because that means it was planted there by something. Currently, I'm at my friend's house and we're both terrified. I'm thinking of sleeping at my parents' house for the next few days. My dog is fine and not acting any different. But could someone please explain what the hell I experienced? And whose nail could it have been? When I was a baby, my parents bought an old house in an historical society that used to be a toll house way back in the day. It's approximately 315 years old, but I think I'm lowballing that. I had never felt completely safe in that house for the 25 years I lived there. When I was a kid, I thought it was normal to just always feel like you were being watched and to feel something hanging on your back. I wasn't allowed to go over people's houses or have anybody over until I got to around middle school. I remember going to a friend's normal modern house when I was 12 and immediately feeling safe and private. I didn't feel eyes burning into me. It was so strange to feel that, and I remember dreading going home. I didn't fully click that my house was odd though until friends came over and they said my house was creepy. I remember going to the bathroom while they were waiting in my bedroom. My dad was asleep in bed and my mom was in her office working, one floor and several rooms adjacent away. I came back from the bathroom and they had asked me who I was talking to. I said, I wasn't talking at all. I was in the bathroom. And I remember my one friend telling me that she heard two women whispering just outside my door. She thought I was talking to my mom. That moment really chilled me. They were afraid to sleep in my room and ended up staying awake all night. I remember most nights when I would go to bed, I would feel like a man was watching me through my window. I slept on the second floor. It felt like there would be somebody standing on the roof watching me, even though I know there physically was nobody there. I begged my mom for years to get curtains, but she refused. She refused to put any curtains up in the house, and I always felt watched from the roof and backyard. I eventually put up blankets to feel safe, but I still felt eyes burning into me. We had a decently furnished basement where my brother and I had all our video game stuff. Anytime I brought friends down, they would always ask to go back upstairs instead, but never said why. I grew to love and hate the basement, as it was a respite from my mother. But then I would have to deal with the door opening and shutting by itself, as well as feeling hands on my ankles from time to time if I tried to nap. I remember one time asking my brother if he ever experienced that, and he said he would often feel a sensation of a hand by his feet, but ignored it because it was that or deal with my mother. Not getting into that kind of worms, but yes, we preferred being terrified instead of dealing with our mother, lol. It soon became a running joke not to go into the basement unless you wanted to get grabbed. And it became normal to just feel fucking uncomfortable down there at all times. Not many things happened to me physically at that house. Almost always it was feelings of being watched, or seeing a figure in my peripheral only to turn and nothing be there. There are a few more things of note that I can think of now, and one is that there were regularly footsteps in my parents' bedroom. But unlike anything else that happened in that house, this was comforting. In the summer, we would sleep on my parents' floor because it saved on AC. I would stay up very late on my Game Boy while my parents slept, but frequently the sound and feeling of footsteps would go by me on the floor. This was when I was very young, and it was just a normal thing, and they made me feel safe. Like whoever was walking around was making sure everything was all right. Even as I got older and would sit in the room directly below, if I heard the footsteps up while my parents were in other rooms, I kind of felt at ease, and like whoever was up there wanted me to know they were there. Also, we had quite a large backyard, about an acre of land, and it was really pretty, but I would often have terrifying nightmares of it most nights. I would have had bad dreams about people dragging me out there, or wild animals attacking me while figures watched. I honestly believe people may have died out there. I stayed out of the backyard as much as possible when I lived there, and those dreams plagued me for years. The last thing I can think of off the top of my head was when I was in the senior year of high school. My mum and I were really at odds, as I was the only child left in the house. She kept asking me to sleep on the floor in the living room. At this point in my life, she slept on the couch and my dad slept in the bed because he genuinely snores so loud she couldn't take it. I really didn't want to sleep in there with her. The living room has 4 large windows, 2 facing outside and 2 facing the backyard. I hated it. I reluctantly agreed, and I remember her leaving the TV on some animal channel when she fell asleep. I was laying on the floor with my phone when suddenly I felt a full hand, palm and fingers lay on the back of my head and very quickly shoved my head down into the pillow. I'm getting anxious just typing about it. The only people home were my mom, myself and my dad. I could hear my dad snoring upstairs and my mom was 5 feet away on the couch. I was utterly terrified and I yelled, "Stop!" and hid under my pillow in fear. My mom freaked out and had no idea what was going on. I was too afraid to move. She didn't believe me when I told her what had happened. And I remember going back up to my bedroom and praying to whatever God would listen to keep me safe from whatever had done that. I could still feel the phantom sensation of that hand. And I remember basically never going into the living room again after that, unless it was daytime and somebody else was with me. The older I got, the less safe I felt in that house. I eventually isolated myself to my bedroom when I wasn't at school or work, so I couldn't fall asleep until 8 or 9 in the morning. I just always felt watched. I started buying white and black candles from the local pagan store, as they told me white was to promote positive energy and black was to protect my mind. You can imagine, after 25 years of weird shit and feeling unsafe, I was willing to try anything to keep me feeling somewhat sane. It helped a lot, but maybe it was just a placebo. Who knows? Now, I live in an apartment very far away from that house and experience zero paranormal things. I don't feel watched, I don't feel scared, I don't have nightmares, and I finally feel safe. I hate going there to visit my parents. This happened about 13 years ago, when I was around 10 years old. Me and my little friends were always looking for some trouble to get ourselves into. Our favourite was making homemade boards for communicating with ghosts. We wanted to experience something scary, or so we thought. I'm not proud of this moment, as I now realise it was extremely disrespectful for us to do so. But bear in mind, I was only 10. A very small baby passed away, and a couple of days after, the grandma also passed away. 2 deaths in one house must mean that we can finally communicate with a ghost. So, we took our homemade board and went a little bit further from the house, so we wouldn't get in trouble but still close to where we could see the porch. We set up everything and grabbed each other's hands. We closed our eyes and started focusing on ghostly stuff or whatever. I felt a sudden urge to open my eyes, and I took a look at the porch of the house. There was a tall woman wearing a long black dress. She was looking down, so I couldn't see anything besides that. At first, I thought it might be the mother of the baby. People in my country wear black after a close member's death, so it's not uncommon. She lifted her head up, and that's when I felt my heart drop, and the hair of my body just stood up. She had no face, but I could tell that she was looking right at me. You know those moments when you're terrified, but for whatever reason you just can't move, can't scream, you just watch in horror? After the initial shock, I managed to let out the most intense scream I've ever done. My friends took one look at me and then looked at the direction I was looking at, and they started screaming too. We ran so fast, we couldn't catch our breath when we got to my house. I've never been so scared in my life. After we managed to catch our breath, I decided to ask what everyone saw. A faceless lady staring right at us. Without me telling them what I saw, that was everyone's answer. I'm not claiming that we saw a ghost. We were very young, and maybe there are some explanations as to what happened. Maybe we wanted to see something so bad that we created a scare out of nothing. What confuses me though, is how did we all see the exact same thing? In May earlier this year, I woke up on a Monday morning no different to any other. I sleep with my phone charging on the bedside table next to me, and when I wake up, the first thing I do, rather unhealthily, is check my messages before getting up. I took my phone off charge, and upon unlocking it, I found that I must have locked it the previous night with the camera app open. I hadn't been using the camera, so I figured I knocked the camera app when locking it before sleep. I didn't think anything of it, but did notice that the flash had also been changed in the settings to be permanently on, which I never have, and it's not easy to knock on by accident. As I turned this setting off, I saw the camera roll icon had a new photo in it. This is the point that I realised something really weird had happened. The picture on my phone, I still have it there, was taken at 2:21 a.m. with my bed on the side that I usually lay on. I sleep alone in a double bed. It was clearly taken in the pitch black, but with the flash on, and it was taken with the back camera. At first, I wondered if I had somehow woken up in the night and checked my phone, accidentally taken a selfie and then gone back to sleep, and then forgotten the whole thing as I was so tired. But it was a back camera photo of my pillow, and I'm not there. The angle of the picture is really creepy, as it is as if it was taken whilst kneeling on my bed in the dark, looking down on where would be myself. Now, logically, the only thing that makes sense, I think, but please give me more suggestions, is that I sleepwalked, taking my phone off charge, turning the flash on, and deciding to stand/kneel on my bed and take a photo of where I was sleeping, then locking my phone and putting it back on charge before getting back into bed. Bear in mind, I have never slept walk, slept talk, etc. in my life, let alone acted as some sort of sleepy creep. I gave my brother a bit of a hard time that morning, making sure he hadn't pranked me or something, and he was equally as scared as me. We noticed that my clock had stopped working that night too, and he wondered if psychologically, when the clock stopped ticking, it interfered with my sleep. But it had stopped in the later hours of the morning after the photo was taken. I guess I just want to discuss this as a non-sleepwalker, as I'm sure these things are fairly usual for some people. Something just doesn't feel right about it. Even if I did just do something strange in my sleep, I hate the thought that I was wandering around in the middle of the night in the dark and have no recollection of it. That really creeps me out. What was my sleepy mind trying to take a photo of? I thought about installing a motion sensor camera to see if I have started sleepwalking or something. But I don't want to see something that will unsettle me forever. My parents and I were driving very early on a rural road on our way to a winery. As it was still early, the sun had not risen yet, and we were driving with the high beams on, and would occasionally switch to the low beams when a random truck would drive by. To explain the situation, I have to mention that my father was the driver. I was shotgun, and my mom was in the back seat, but was still looking at the road as we were having a conversation and admiring the scenery. The conversation stilled when, without blinking, I, and apparently my parents too, saw a man walking right in the middle of the road. I didn't just blink, and he didn't just come into the lights from obscurity. The man materialized himself in the middle of the road and was looking at us. This couldn't have lasted more than a few seconds, but in my mind, it took hours. I thought he would see us driving and swerve, or at least stop coming closer to where we were about to drive through. But he didn't, and we didn't stop driving. We drove right through him, and he disappeared a millimeter away from the car, just as weird as he had appeared. It wasn't an illusion. I saw him very clearly, and he looked just like a regular man. Not see-through and not scary at all. Nobody in the car said anything, and I was too on edge to start talking as I thought I was insane. My dad stopped at the nearest gas station, got out of the car, and started checking it. But the car presented no sign of crashing into anything. We hit a very big rabbit once, and I'm sure a man would do a much bigger damage than that. My mom and I also got out, and at this point, it was obvious to me that he was checking to see if we ran over anything, so I asked, "Did you see him too?" I think he was relieved that he was not imagining things, but also scared that we all saw what we thought to be a person. He said he did, and that we shouldn't talk about it. My mom just gave me the look that meant she would tell me later. As soon as I was just the two of us, I couldn't help but ask her what happened. Why did Dad not want to talk about it? And why did he continue driving when there was something that we thought was a man in the middle of the road? She told me it happened to them before, and they almost crashed. But when they turned to look what made them always crash, there was nobody. My dad's very superstitious. He is Russian. And he said that those are evil spirits and that you shouldn't talk about them because they feed off of that.